screens, it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The hypocrisy, this mockery, and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Welcome back to Rogue Soul, where tonight it is the winning report, where we will look at all of the news domestically and internationally, and we will see that we win all along, not because we are delusional and refuse to look at reality or the darkness of it, but because we have eyes to see through the bias, the deceit, the propaganda, the rhetoric, and a heart that sees through the illusion of destruction. We know we are eternal and could never be destroyed, and so it is true that we are always winning. Please go to roguesoul.org for everything I do. All of my books are there. You can schedule one-on-one spiritual healing sessions with me there. You can also find the classes that I teach on how to become a healer yourself. The upcoming money package starts this Sunday. It is your last chance to get in on that this time around. This is the class in which we learn how to bring more abundance in actually into our lives, the real, the practical, direct ways to transform our world in relation to money. One of the most invaluable classes I teach. I would love to have you there. That starts again this Sunday, the 16th of November. And you can go and grab that on my site at roguesoul.org, along with everything else. Also go to rogueways.substack.com, where you would already know about the money package class if you are subscribed there for free, where you get all sorts of articles, philosophy, religion, society, and more. And also at the paid level, if you choose to support, I appreciate your support. It supports this show that I do for free and offer to anyone who would like it. It supports all the work that I do for free. And it also gets you access to some of those channeled messages that come through the spiritual ancestors and are on my Substack. You get access to the entire archive when you become a paying supporter. I think it's only $6 a month. It's even cheaper if you do a year subscription. So go subscribe now, free or paid, and thank you for doing so. Let's jump into it. Tonight, we have the U.S. has designated the German version of Antifa also as a foreign terrorist organization. They've been getting on this bent of designating Antifa as terrorist organization. Even if you somewhat agree with Antifa in some way, they are a terrorist organization. They do commit terrorism. They use acts of violence and force in order to push a political agenda. And that is what terrorists do. And so it makes sense to me. It also, the funding arm of Antifa, which also, has other sorts of funding sources and other sorts of organizations that work with Antifa in many ways. And so it's a very complicated octopus out there, many arms, many tentacles, but some of it comes from these international Antifa groups. And so it makes sense as well to specifically target some of those that are the most powerful. German Antifa, of course, recently in the news because of bombing the cars, burning down the cars of some of the AfD party there, which is the only party in Germany that is aiming to stop the wanton weaponization of immigration that has been destroying Germany from the inside out. So, of course, they have to be taken down. Remember, Antifa isn't just a group of people who mean well. That would be nice enough. Antifa is a group that is weaponized by much more powerful and larger interests and aimed at very specific adversaries. So whether some of the people in Antifa have really big hearts and really beautiful intentions, that's not what Antifa is anymore, if it ever was. So I'll call it a win. We'll move on. John Fetterman, who I was just noticing has a lot of things to say that the Democrats and leftists in general might not like very much, is suddenly now collapsed from a ventricular fibrillation flare-up, a heart attack, I believe is what we would call that in layman's terms, or something similar, on his early morning walk. He recently pointed out to a leftist host on a leftist media show, I believe it was CNN. I don't remember what the host was, but she asked him, who in your experience is more violent or more, dark or, forceful? Is it the far right or the far left? And he said, oh, by far, it's the far left. And he's probably the only leftist that's ever said that out loud. It's very rare for leftists to take responsibility for themselves. And So very interesting. There's some other things too. I do believe he was against the shutdown and some stuff. And so is it that he has become a problem and they've used the heart attack gun on him? There is such a device. Of course, it's not actually called that scientifically, but that is its effect. Has that been pulled out against Fetterman? Or is it a coincidence? Is he just, he's had strokes, he's had other problems. Is he just, collapsing under the weight of his own illness? Who knows? Who can say? But that's just happened today, right before this episode. Verizon, I also have just heard, has just cut 15,000 jobs. We keep hearing big numbers like this. And while I don't know for sure why, we can all guess and make a pretty educated and good guess that it is due to AI replacing many of those jobs, not needing them. It may also be that there is less demand and that, less people are buying things. And so in general, we see this contraction of the economy and layoffs are part of that. And it could be both. That could be happening. And also AI is replacing some jobs. And so we could see a little bit of both. Either way, we can probably, in all likelihood, expect to see more of this happening, especially from those big, massive corporations like Verizon that employ so many people. We could see these mass layoffs continuing. So we've seen it in the government, in the private, in the public sector. We've seen it all over the place, and it's a fast-changing economic world. Just like in every sort of revolution, in the technological revolution, the world's going to change. The way that life looks is going to change. So in the meantime, it might get pretty bumpy. We keep seeing this every time I do a monthly tarot reading for many years now. It's almost always saying like, the economy is shaky, and that hasn't really changed. And so I see that as the outlook going forward too. So sorry to the people who got laid off from Verizon. The UK abolishes police and crime commissioners. This is the craziest thing I've heard so far, maybe. Is it say they're going to save the taxpayer £100 million with mayors and councils to take on the responsibility from 2028 on. Is this the continuation of the desertion of policing forces in general, the taking out their teeth, the making them weak and ineffectual? Is this a continuation of that? That's where I have to look, because that's been the case for so many years now. What, since 2012, 2010? Right? That last economic collapse, 2008, we just have seen less and less and less resources put into policing in general. A lot of people might call that open because, the militarization of the police and some of this was getting a bit much. But we actually have seen nothing but harm to our communities from this. I remember very, very easily, it was easy to see the crime rates go up directly as the money into policing went down. When criminals know there's less police, less response to their crimes, less holding them accountable, as we've seen in all these district attorneys that are Soros funded or leftists, whether they actually have good hearts or they're actually trying to destroy society, who knows? But when we see that the criminals see they're not going to be held accountable, these district attorneys are going to let them off. They're not going to be sentenced. And also there's not even going to be any cops there in the first place to stop them. Then it emboldens them. And so we've seen crime go up and up and up. And you can say all you want that, this always happens when the economy is kind of wonky. Sure, to some extent it does, but not to this extent. This is a planned demolition, and this is a definitely intentional. And so when the UK says they're going to abolish police and crime commissioners, it doesn't sound like a good thing to me. The UK has been doing a decent job of its people sort of standing up and resisting and saying no to things, especially the digital IDs and this sort of stuff. So perhaps they'll continue and they'll say no to this too. And there's some things that they seemingly haven't been able to overcome. And so the planned destruction of the UK continues, perhaps. Send love to the people there, send a backbone to the people there, and a strong will to the people there. Chinese Foreign Ministry said, quote, if Japan intervenes militarily in the Taiwan Strait situation, China will strike back decisively, and warns Japan not to play with fire on the Taiwan question, for those who play with fire will perish by it. Taiwan, of course, is the question. This is the front on the World War III, the fifth generation warfare, and the nonlinear warfare that we've been watching for years on this show. Taiwan and China, the chip question, the manufacturing of computer chips. This is a economic war, you might say, a production war and trade war, and many other levels of war as well. And so we've been watching this heat up all along. And now China's been getting kind of saucy, and they're warning Japan, don't get involved. And honestly, it's hard to say like whether they should or not. I guess that's up to them. I'd say mostly this seems like a war between the US and China, and maybe Japan should stay out of it. I, for one, would love to see Japan continue to exist. It's a much smaller land mass than China, has much less military capability than China, unfortunately, and just the proximity might mean that that war would maybe never end until Japan was utterly ruined. It's probably one of our best societies on earth. So sad. I hope China or Japan makes it out of this. I hope China can find a way to calm down a bit. And it would be nice if the world could agree to share the chip manufacturing, dispersion, and selling of those things, so we can all have our technology moving forward. That'd be great. We'll see. Keeping an eye on that as we have. We'll see what happens next. So there's this thing where some people who were acting as electors in the 2020 election, and electors are the people who cast the Electoral College votes. And they had gone and made sort of a backup slate, was how they were calling it. And essentially they were casting their votes in another way that was a backup to the way they had cast them, because they didn't trust that they were going to be reported correctly because of all those shenanigans we saw in the 2020 election. So they wanted to record it in another way so that it couldn't be misconstrued. This is how the story goes, right? The Biden administration didn't like that. And so they criminalized it, and they charged all of these electors with things like election conspiracy and the like. These are serious charges. And in the history of the United States, that has never, ever been something that has happened. It was very unconstitutional. Is absolutely okay for them to have done what they did, but that didn't stop the Biden administration from going after them, charging them, sentencing them, and stretching out this lawfare as long as they could, essentially ruining many of these people's lives, their reputations, their holdings, etc. So it has now come about that Donald Trump has pardoned all of those people. So again, you might like that or not like that, right? Depending on your point of view. But I'll say that it is more just and it is more appropriate given the precedent and the intention of the Constitution and of the job of electors. And so I'm going to call it a win. So that's a huge win for people who pay attention at that level of detail. This is a win as far as I'm concerned. So good for them for being pardoned. Good for them for fighting the hard fight on behalf of justice and actual republic, the actual republic of the United States. So this is funny, the whole Epstein thing. This is probably the biggest news in most people's minds of this week. And there's this whole thing. I didn't know this was going on, where a woman was being sworn into Congress, or she should have been sworn into Congress. She was a congresswoman. I'm going to say Adelita Grijalva. She was sworn in recently, but she perhaps should have been sworn in maybe even 6 months ago, is what it looks like. She was elected in the U.S. House of Representatives in Arizona. And Arizona, they're saying, elected their first Latina congresswoman, and how great. And then Speaker of the House said, no, we're not going to swear her in. We're not in a real session yet. And then the shutdown happened, and then he refused to swear her in. And there might be some excuse for that, but it seems to me like there isn't. It seems to me like that was definitely very political, and they were trying to keep her out as long as possible, and not even necessarily because of like who she is or where she's from or any of that stuff, but because of this Epstein vote. So it seems pretty shady on the Republican side of things. It seems pretty shady on the speaker's side of things to have not sworn her in. So she couldn't cast votes because she wasn't officially sworn in, even though she'd been elected. Some people said, yeah, there is some precedent for not swearing people in until a certain type of session or whatever, but it sounds like he did it for some Republicans and not for her. So again, it seems pretty fishy, even if there was a precedent. Well, she is finally sworn in, and people written like epic poems of like the great success that she was sworn in, and like everything changed in the world, and like pretty pathologically sappy, weird stuff. But like I also get it. Like this is one of those times where it does seem like it was unfair, it was used against them, it was very political, and the Democrats actually had something legitimate to be upset about and to criticize. So maybe thus their strong emotions now that she's sworn in. And congratulations to her. And if it was a real election, we all know about how doubtful Arizona, Nevada's elections are, and how much of the cartels and the sort of mafia seem to control those areas. That's not even in question. So like, is she involved with that? I have no idea. I haven't looked into her, but when I hear those states mentioned, I automatically think that is there something else shady going on? Probably. But right, again, on the surface, this woman was elected. She's finally sworn in now. And as she's finally sworn in, she then helps to pass the motion to release these Epstein files. This has been held up for a long time. And you can guess why, or who's doing what, or which side does it benefit, or whatever you want. We've talked about Epstein so much over the years. And both sides are definitely implicated in his dastardly schemes. So these are finally now, because of that woman's finally getting sworn in, finally voting, being the deciding vote to release those documents, they're released now. But the funniest part to me is that all these documents actually exonerate Trump, which is the opposite of what they seem to want. But also, they only wanted to release like 3 or 4 pages of thousands of them. Thousands of pages. So the Democrats passed this. They finally got it. They're celebrating. They're like, yeah, we're releasing these. And the Republicans were like, oh, let's do all of them then, and just release thousands more pages. And the Democrats were like, no, that's not what we wanted. And I mean, I don't know why they didn't think that through, or if this is actually all the play and that was just meant to seem like both sides were at odds. And you can take your own view on that. But the documents are released. 23,000 documents are released. Only 3 of them were what the Democrats had originally released. And then almost instantly, the Republicans came through and released 23,000 documents. So I'm sure you can find deep analyses of like what's in them. I'm sure you can go look at them yourself. You can do anything you want. I may or may not. I don't know. I don't really care at this point. Like I said many times, it's about 10 or 15 years too late for any of it to matter. But if it does bring some justice, great. If it's justice on Republican and Democrat sides, it should be. And so like, hopefully, right? So those are released. Check them out if you want. But what's really funny to me too is Democrats were trying really hard to specifically hide the many documents that exonerate Donald Trump. And we've talked about this before, but I just realized another level to this story. So you may remember Virginia Giuffre. She's one of Epstein's victims. That's not in contestation. She is one of the few that's gone through the full, like, here's all the official testimony she gave and all of the whole rigmarole. And so we've got a lot of official documents around her, a lot of official testimony. Mind you, 100% of real verified Epstein victims have exonerated Donald Trump. Nobody seems to care about that part, but that's true. Virginia Giuffre also did. And when you look at some of the pages that have been released and some of the testimony that Virginia Giuffre gave, it really seems like they tried hard to get her to implicate Trump. I mean, she'll be telling some totally different story and they'll say, oh, and so when did Trump hit on you? And she'll say, Trump, he didn't. He never did. He wasn't even there. And they'll be like, oh, well, what role did he play in this? She's like, he didn't, that I know of. And you could kind of just feel the like, why are you even asking me this? I've already told you. So it's almost like badgering and leading the witness. It's what it feels like when you read some of this. So she exonerates him. She actually worked to get him elected. And then if you remember recently, she died. And we talked about it a lot on the show here because it was a bit strange. And she seemed to have gotten in a really weird car accident that shook her. So you wonder immediately, like, was someone trying to get her into a car accident and kill her? She made it out of the accident, but she came out publicly and she said, I'm going to die within 3 days, et cetera, et cetera. And the doctors and her family were like, no, she's not. She's okay. There's no internal bleeding. There's no break, like she's been released, like she's not in critical care. But then she did die shortly after that. And I don't think it was 3 days, but I think it was something like a week and a half. It was pretty quick on the heels. And so it was weird. It was weird that she would have said that. It was weird that she said it with, if you go back and look at the video of her doing it, it's with this sense that she saw something that made her feel as though this isn't over and I'm done for. People have said, oh, she's suicidal because of what she went through and this and that. She had so much success since then. Most people who have reached some sort of justice have been heard, have been listened to, have gotten all of the compassion she received for being a victim, have gotten to have support around that, recognition and all of this, and maybe even achieve some level of justice and getting the higher ups and the courts and whatever to listen. They are not necessarily at high risk of suicide. That's not how it tends to go. It can happen. Of course it can. So people said, oh, she was suicidal and whatever. And I don't know. I'm not her, right? But at the time I just said, well, I don't know. Does she need attention? Like, why is she coming out saying she's going to die? And then when she did die, I was like, it doesn't even make sense because she's already said everything she needs to say. It's already been documented officially. Like, why take her out of the equation? So I was like, so maybe she did kill herself, or maybe it was just sort of random and not related to the whole Epstein thing. Well, now I see this and I think, oh, they had to get rid of the one person who was very vocally, very consistently always exonerating Trump. Because what they really want is to use this to attack Trump. They want to implicate him. That's why they made up the whole birthday card thing and all of these ridiculous things. They want him to fall under this weight, when in reality, he's one of the only people on either side of the aisle that has power and isn't implicated in the Epstein fiasco. So pretty fascinating. She's one of the few people who really kept to that, stuck to that, never wavered on that, was outspoken, was heard, was listened to, had a huge following. And so maybe they did need to take her out. Maybe that is why she died. Who knows? All things that came to my mind when I saw the few documents the Democrats wanted to release and the tons of information that is in all the documents they didn't want to release. So God bless her and all the victims, protection and love to them. And hopefully we get even more of these actual pedophiles arrested forever and ever, or worse. That's fine too. And so recently we had also the other big story of the week was this Aurora Borealis coming back. We had huge solar flares this past week. We had X-class flares multiple times, Earth facing. We've had direct hits. We've had glancing hits. A lot of times the flares go off other directions and they don't really affect us much. These were not that way. These were right at us. We have the potential for many more coming up as far as like what we can see in the sun and what might pop off towards us. So we might get even bigger or more of these, the highest level flares that we can monitor and that the sun creates. And so we got a bunch of those right on the heels of each other this week. And therefore, especially with our weakening magnetosphere, they caused huge auroras. And we saw them all the way down into the States. And you may have seen, again, the plethora of pictures on any social media feed you chose to go on of all of these colors, the red, the green. Most people are doing that with that long exposure method. But some people did see pretty cool displays pretty far south with their naked eye. So it was really intense. And so, I usually get a lot of physical, mental activity from that. I'm often a little bit muddy headed. I get the headaches. My body has tension. I get like muscle spasms and different things. I often have to just lay down for hours and close my eyes. And this is often the case when we're getting these big influxes of energy. So always take care of yourself, always be grounded. If you could just sit under a tree for hours, it's actually one of the best ways to avoid some of this radiation coming right through you. So you can ground, you can definitely keep your minerals really high. And I mean, do it safely within like the limits because I'm not a doctor, ask your doctor and stuff, but probably more than you think. Do a lot of your really good, the trace minerals, get those, and then do a lot of good minerals in your drinking water and whatnot, electrolytes. That's going to help too. But the other thing I notice when this is happening is that a bunch of, I'm going to say, conspiracy theorists, people in alternative media, are coming out making fun of anyone who thinks the aurora was created by the sun. And I got kind of confused about that. I was like, wait, what's this? And then I remembered there was people who were attacking me because I believe the sun exists. And then I think that's what this is connected to. So you may see this where people are like me laughing at the normies who think that the aurora is real. And, and I'm like, really? I'm looking into it. And they're like, oh, if you don't know that HAARP creates the auroras, then you're crazy. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. HAARP can create artificial auroras. That's fact. That's not in dispute. That's happened before. HAARP also does many other things. It's an ionospheric heater, so it heats up the ionosphere, so it can definitely cause some of those things. But it does lots of other things too. And every time HAARP's active, we don't have auroras like this. So it'd be silly to assume that every time that HAARP is like always producing all these auroras. I don't know if you knew this, but up in the Arctic Circle, they see auroras all the time. Not like every day, every night, all the time, but like very, very frequently all throughout the year. So like, do you think that's all HAARP? I think they think that's all HAARP. And I'm trying to figure out then if this is connected to the simulation delusion, or if it's connected to like the flat earth stuff. And I think it's connected to all of it. And like, it stuns me. It just stuns me as much as the people who were trying to convince me that the sun isn't real. So if you're on that wavelength, cool for you. I think perhaps you should consider that the sun is real. And this is exactly what would happen when the sun has these coronal mass ejections and these energetic disturbances that it's throwing at the earth, and that's predictably true and always has been. But I'll add on top of that, just in case you're still questioning, any astronomer, including you, if you have the right telescope, can also monitor these things on your own. So this was the other thing. People are like, you believe NASA? I'm like, I don't have to believe NASA to know the sun exists. Like, not even a little. Anybody can look up and see the sun. And they're like, no, that's the, dome, and that's the projection and whatever. And I'm like, but you can see it with a telescope, and you can see it plasmatically like moving, and the coronal holes and all of that, and anyone can at any time. And you could still decide to believe that's something other than what has been described to us traditionally, but you can't then say it's not there. I mean, it's there, it's right there. Whatever. So if you've got a better take on this and I'm missing something, please tell me. I don't think I am. So the shutdown's over. Hurrah. I don't know if you care, but it is. So I guess we're supposed to care, I think. And the FBI has arrested Newsom's ex-chief of staff on 23-count indictment, including bank and wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud, and they're going to remain vigilant in their efforts to uncover fraud and corruption, ensuring government systems are held to the highest standards. So pretty cool. Pretty cool. If we're actually taking out corruption, I'm down with it, especially given how corrupt Newsom, Pelosi's his aunt, remember that crime family in California. If we're taking some of their power down a bit and making it harder for them to commit crimes and defraud people, I'm for that. I'm going to call it a win. I also call this a huge win. I actually love this more than most things. Huge indigenous protests happened down at the COP30. These indigenous protesters stormed the COP30, the climate summit that was happening down there in Brazil, and made just the biggest ruckus. And it was awesome. It was awesome because if you remember, I've talked about it many times in the previous year leading up to this summit, they cut down hundreds of miles of rainforest to make this summit happen. They cut down hundreds of miles of pristine, virgin, ancient rainforest to make a new climate summit location. And then everyone had to fly in on their private jets, hundreds of people flying in on private jets, and then drive all these hundreds of miles to get to this location. And they call it a climate summit, an environmental summit. These people have greenwashed this whole thing in order to centralize their power through absolute technocratic disturbance, to absolute technocratic tyranny. And they're doing it all under the guise of this climate thing. If they cared about the climate or the environment, they wouldn't fly thousands and hundreds and whatever people in their private jets. If they cared about this stuff, they would never cut down the rainforest. And it's so obvious that I hope that it breaks through people's remaining illusions that these people mean to help you. They don't. They want your power, they want your money, they want to control you, and that's it. And if the way they can do it is to tell you that they're helping the environment, that's what they'll do. But you can know them by their fruits. Did they help the environment by having this summit? No. They agreed on ways to centralize power around the world, and that's it. So these indigenous people came in and disrupted all of that. And they said, we are one of the primary people who would have something to say about our environment, and you didn't invite us to the table. So we're shutting it down. I love it, and it's rad. You can see videos of it if you want to look that up. Pretty inspiring, very cool. So that was neat. Big win for us. Remember Tammy Duckworth? I believe she's from Hawaii. She's a senator, and a staff member for Tammy Duckworth reportedly posed as a lawyer and falsified Homeland Security form in order to try to release an illegal immigrant who was in the process of being deported. So Tammy Duckworth's staffer went and pretended to be a lawyer to break someone out of a completely legal deportation. That's how far these Democrats, these leftists will go. They will break the law in order to keep illegal immigrants here, even if they are otherwise other types of criminal. Not just that they came here criminally, but that they are also breaking laws and committing crimes of horrendous natures otherwise. I don't know for sure the person she was trying to break out of the deportation place was that kind of criminal or not, but either way, they broke the law and they're being legally deported. This is kind of sad. The US Treasury has minted its final penny, marking the end of the coin's production for 230 years. We've had the penny and it's dead now. So I'd say, like, find all your pennies and hold them. I bet they're going to be worth money someday. I know, like, some of the older ones that are actually copper, or some of the ones that are specific, methods or mess ups or misprints or non-misprints, but they're just rare. Like, I know some of those are already worth a lot of money, but who knows? Maybe the rest of the pennies might be too, because we're never going to have any more. I'm kind of sad. I went to Sam's Club the other day. I get cash back on my Sam's Club credit card. This is not an advertisement for a credit card. I do not suggest you go into debt, but the way I use my credit cards has always been to pay for all the things I would buy normally, like groceries and gas and whatnot, get the rewards for that, and then just pay it off completely every month. So I never actually do go into debt. So that's a neat thing that I do. And so they give me money. So I go in, sometimes they're giving me $200, sometimes they're giving me 100 and whatever, and it's cash. So I go into Sam's Club, I get my cash. So every time they just say, oh, you want the full amount? I say, yeah. And so it's always like 26 cents or 77 or, whatever amount of change, whatever the dollar amount is. And so I get the change. And this time I was supposed to get, like, let's just say 22 cents back. And she said, well, I'm just going to give you a quarter because we don't do pennies anymore. I was like, oh, I mean, that's cool. You're rounding up in my favor, at least. Like, I like that. But weird. And I didn't know yet that was the same day that they had done this. They stopped producing the penny. So goodbye, penny. We have loved you dearly. We still love you. We'll see you some other day. California has admitted they illegally issued 17,000 non-domiciled commercial driver's license to dangerous foreign drivers. 17,000. We keep hearing about these illegal immigrants or people who are not legally allowed to have these types of licenses, people who didn't pass any sort of test or training for these licenses, people who don't know how to drive, especially these big rigs, these CDL driver's licenses. These types of things we keep hearing about, and we keep seeing the aftermath of it being people's actual lives lost massive amounts of people are being slaughtered essentially by these drivers who have no idea how to drive. And the videos are terrifying. So you'll watch, if you've watched any of them, I have a hard time doing it. They don't even brake sometimes, and they just smash through like 10, 20 cars. We just had another one in Colorado not that long ago. I mean, this happens way too often, and California is now admitting, yeah, we gave 17,000 of these licenses out to people who can't actually drive, but are doing so now for money. And it's another one of those things where people say like, oh, immigrants and illegal immigrants and whatever, and HB1, they don't take jobs away from the Americans. Well, I'm pretty sure you can find 17,000 Americans who want to get paid big bucks and drive a truck around. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can. But instead you did this to save money and to kill people. You've killed people. You're a murderer. It's not just like, oops, we didn't know. I mean, it's a pretty simple thing to know. If you give a license to a person who doesn't know how to drive, someone's going to die. It's not hard to know that. So pretty ridiculous. I hope people are held accountable for that. I hope the drivers are. It's also still your fault. Even if someone said, here, drive this, here's the license, it's still your responsibility to know what you're doing. And if you don't, it's your responsibility not to do it. So I hope they're held accountable. And I also hope the officials who made this happen and allowed this to happen are held accountable for murder. I'm sure it has to be manslaughter because it wasn't intentional directly, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. I hope they're held accountable. We would call that justice and a win if it happens. It's at least a win that we know what is actually happening now. The U.S. plans to build a $500 million military base near the Gaza border. According to Israeli officials, the base will accommodate several thousand U.S. and international troops tasked with maintaining the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. The ceasefire. Now it's just this imaginary thing we just say is happening, even though it's not happening. Like they were like, oh, we took a break from the ceasefire as we just like shelled the crap out of Gaza. But like now we're back to the ceasefire. So now it's the ceasefire again. And yeah, we're still like killing and arresting and like, but you know, it's a ceasefire. So it's just the euphemistic term for whatever Israel wants to do. And now we're going to have this base there. Will it be good for Gazans, Palestinians? Will it be bad for them? We've yet to see. I'm sure almost 100% of people are assuming it won't be good for them. I'm not committed to deciding that right now. So we'll see what happens. The DHS Secretary Kristi Noem on H-1Bs says under the Trump admin, this is that type of visa where they can import people to do higher level jobs at a higher level of pay. It's often doctors, engineers, etc. Under the Trump admin, we've sped up our process and added integrity to the visa programs, to green cards, to all of that. But also more people are becoming naturalized under this admin than ever before. More people are becoming citizens. So interesting. They're kind of like cutting it down the middle. And it is true. They have changed things. If you want to do H-1B now, you have to pay, you know, upwards of, you know, 10,000, sometimes 100,000 to get that person here. So you have to really know you actually need them for it to matter, right? You can't just import anyone just to save money, basically. If you really need them, you can grab them. So some of these changes are actually very meaningful and will actually help Americans. So that's really cool. But they're also giving citizenship and naturalization to a lot of people, apparently. So, you know, cool. But you would think that leftists would be happy about some of this, but I don't know if they're capable of that. Pretty miserable people. They're not able to see even things that they say that they like. So Trump has sent a letter to President Herzog of Israel to formally asking him to pardon Netanyahu. You know, Netanyahu has been barely escaping all of this court, all of these charges against him over and over and over again for at least a couple of years now. And Trump's asking the president there to formally pardon him. Will that happen? I don't think so, honestly, but we'll get to that. So put a pin in that. We have this sort of pointless article here. This is a new bee species was found with devil horns on its females. And this was discovered in Australia. It has to be Australia. If it's going to be a poisonous snake, a weird bug, a devil horned bee, like it's going to be in Australia. Australia is like the most godforsaken place on earth, it seems like. And so this new bee was named Lucifer. And the person who named it said they're a huge fan of the Netflix series. So Lucifer for the horns, fan of the Netflix series. Pretty silly. You should probably be naming things in some sort of like scientific, taxonomical, appropriate way. And Lucifer indicates that something produces light, and this bee does not produce light. So I'm going to call it not a win. It's just not really appropriate to just name things for fun. In my humble opinion, we have order for a reason, and it helps us do better and better. And this doesn't. So not the bee's fault, just this guy. China has planned to block U.S. military access to rare earth magnets. That's been true for a time. Not sure why this is a headline. I think it's just that they finally admitted it out loud. As I said, that tension between China and the U.S. is building, and so maybe they were just taunting. You're like, yeah, we know, but I guess thanks for saying it out loud. We also have U.S. Navy's largest and most expensive aircraft carrier arriving near Latin America. This whole Venezuela thing is heating up. I've told you why I support this aggression towards Venezuela, and it's not actually aggression, it's actually self-defense. I've come to understand based on that whole voting system thing, the cartels there and who they're in league with and what they do to our elections. So I call this defense, and I'm down for it. I think especially defending yourself is always appropriate. It's unfortunate when that has to move to any kind of blows or force, but that is sometimes what has to happen. So that's happening. Our airship carriers, the biggest and best, are down there in the region, ready for more if that's what happens. China's cybersecurity agency has accused the U.S. government of orchestrating the theft of approximately $13 billion worth of Bitcoin. And that might be true. I wouldn't put it past. If Bitcoin's hackable and obtainable, and you could do it, and you're powerful, you're probably going to do it. So yeah, I don't know. And is it fair? Is it not fair? What's actually happening? So hard to say. We'd have to go into the history of where this Bitcoin came from, who had it, how did China obtain it in the first place? Probably not by any sort of just or right means, which doesn't then mean, someone else is allowed to steal it, but it also makes it less meaningful if someone does. So there's that, at least. That happened. Ilhan Omar rails the Somali, senator? Rails against tribes that didn't vote for Omar Fateh. This is this whole controversy now in this election, and I want to say Minneapolis of Omar Fateh, also Somalian. So, Ilhan Omar is Somalian, Omar Fateh is Somalian. They're not related anyway. They just happen to be Somali. And he ran for mayor, and he ran against some white guy. I don't know his name. And the white guy won. And so, but there's enough Somalis in this area that it should have been Omar Fateh who won. Because they're pretty, I want to say tribalistic voters, but I actually mean that in is like, he's just Somali, so vote Somali. But actually they're so tribalistic that he wasn't the right tribe of Somali, and so they didn't vote for him. And so this whole thing has exploded in the Somali community in the United States of like, we have to stick together no matter what our tribal differences are, which is hilarious to me. Because you should vote for whoever you want. I don't care. Did you vote for him or against him because of his tribe? None of my business. That's who you vote for. It's your thing. But I get what they're saying. They're like, if we want to have power in the US, we have to stick together, and they're not wrong. But also, why are you more committed to your Somali roots than you are to your United States identity and culture? Why wouldn't you vote for who you genuinely believe is the best choice for you as a citizen, which is what voting is ostensibly for? And wouldn't that matter more than something that's happening in some other country which you don't live in? And so this brings up this whole question of like, what are you here for? What are you in the United States for? If you're in the United States to support Somalia, you shouldn't be in the United States. If you're in the United States to support Somalia, you should go back to Somalia, because Somalia is what you actually love, actually have allegiance to, actually feel committed to, not the United States. And I'm not saying you should vote for the white guy or the black guy, the Somali or the whatever he is, Irish, I don't know. I'm saying you should vote for who actually upholds your interests in your opinion. And if that happens to be a Somali guy, great. And if it happens to be the white guy, great. But if you're just choosing because it's Somali, that's antithetical to what voting for, that's antithetical to what the United States is supposed to be about, and it's antithetical to your claim that you're here because you want to be here. And if you want to be here, it means you want to be here more than you want to be in Somalia. And if you want to be here more than you want to be in Somalia, it means you admit there's something better about the United States than there is about Somalia. So why do you have allegiance to Somalia, to any tribe in Somalia, or to Somalia itself? That's my question. And that's what this brought up for me. Trump admin's 50-year mortgage was discussed with insiders, but was not fully vetted before being publicized. I sometimes wonder if Trump actually does say these things early in order that we can have this huge outcry from people before a bunch of propaganda goes into convincing people they want a 50-year mortgage or something similar. That's what I wonder. In any case, whatever happened, the insiders were not fully consulted before he went public with it, and people hate the idea, as they should. As we talked about on day 0 this past Sunday, it is a horrible idea. It costs you much, much more money in the long run, and it essentially moves us closer to the stage where no one will be able to own anything, which is what most of the world has moved towards. I shouldn't say that, but a large portion of the most powerful countries in the world are more and more moving that direction. And some of the weak ones. And so it's not good. It's not healthy for an economy. It's not healthy for you. It doesn't help you in any way. It costs you much more money. And so I'm glad there's such a huge outcry against it, and I hope it never becomes a thing. 30 years is long enough. If you can't do it in that time, or already have other problems going on. I'm not saying you, I'm saying like as a society, we do. Huge win. The Olympics are set to ban all transgender athletes. Ban on transgender women in Olympic sports is edging closer and is strongly expected to be in place for the LA Games in 2028. That's fantastic. I can't tell you how good this is for women, for women's spaces, to protect women's achievements. It's all sorts of good. Physically protect them, especially when we're talking about boxing and these types of things. It is absolutely true. Males have all kinds of genetic, physiological advantages, sports-wise, athletic-wise, over women. And so for the Olympics to be catching up to this is great. To see that tide has turned enough that the Olympics can get with reality is great. So we'll call this a huge win for women around the world. Trump has launched this prescription website that's open now in 2026, I believe. And this is what we were sort of talking about a little while ago. People are really mad that Trump seemed to give $70 billion to Pfizer in this contract. But what actually happened was that Trump forced Pfizer to use this sort of prescription website launch so that people can shop for and see the prices of things and get far reduced prices for prescriptions. And that benefits you directly. And I mean, ideally, none of us are on prescriptions. But if you are, this is a much better version of being on prescription medication than we've ever had before. And Pfizer is now locked into that. So their earnings are locked into them doing this. And this is what I was trying to share a little while ago, because it was the only perspective that wasn't getting any air. There were people who hate him for it, and then there were other types of people who hated him for it. The Democrats hated him for it, and all the right-wing people hated him for it. All of the conspiracy people, all of the alternative media, like everybody hated him for it. But here was this little nugget of like, wait, isn't this actually really good for us? Just the little guy, the consumers. And yes, it is. So that's launching now, and we're going to see how good it is for us. And I hope, like many of his other achievements, this doesn't just get washed away in the general Trump hatred that every single corridor of society seems to have, no matter what actually happens, no matter what the reality is. And I've said a million times, like, I hate that I'm defending him all of this time, because I'm not a Republican and I'm not a fan of Trump. And yet I am more and more, because what he actually ends up doing ends up almost always being much better for me in my life. And like, I can't deny it. I'm not emotionally attached to any identity enough that I'm blinded to that. And I don't know many people who can say the same. There's people who are so attached to their identity as a Republican, as a Democrat, as an independent, as an anarchist, as a show host, as an alternative conspiracy theorist, as an alternative media host, all of these identities, and they're so attached to that, and their audience is too. And so if they say anything other than I hate Trump, screw Trump, Trump's blah, 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 if they do anything other than that, they lose people, they lose money, they lose themselves because their identity is part of this. And I, I'm not always right, not always wrong, whatever, but I am always open to wondering if I'm right or wrong. Like always. There's nothing that I've just like foregone, like I hope there's nothing left, that I've just foregone conclusion, like this is how it is. No matter how many times I've been shown that's how it is, I will still hold that as only a possibility. You could show me 100 times that this is most likely what's going to happen. When A and B happen, C is likely to happen. And I'll still know that there is a chance that someday that's not what's going to happen. My favorite professor of all time said, hold truth in one hand and hold your other hand open for the truth that will replace it. And that's a very different saying. It's not in case there is a truth. It's saying this will become replaced at some time. And if you know that about your ideas, it makes it much easier to move faster through all the layers of illusion you will encounter in being human. That's the biggest win of all. The biggest win of all is when you have that exact perspective. This is the truth, and it will change 100% of the time. Look back at all the things you've thought were true throughout your life. Which ones of them stayed forever? None. So get over it. So that's happening. Our prescription prices might be better. History was made. The flurries in both Florence and Myrtle Beach are the earliest on record. We had some snow that was much earlier than ever on record, some temperatures, low temperatures that were earlier. We seem to have some heat now as well. It's a little bit higher than normal. The climate alarmists will say this is global climate change. The HARP and ISCAT people, the geoengineering people, who are right, those things exist, but they'll say it's just that, it's just geoengineering and HARP and the ISCAT, and almost everyone will miss the geomagnetic excursion that's going on, and almost everyone will miss the pole shift that's happening, and almost everyone will miss all of this energy the sun's spitting at us and how our magnetosphere can barely take it, and we're consistently getting really messed up from that. And we're having volcanoes and earthquakes and big storms and low temps and high temps because of that. So remember that there is that third option, and almost no one's going to talk about it, and almost no one's going to acknowledge it. So yeah, the weather's weird. Mom Donnie won. I believe we talked about that last winning report last week, but he's facing a backlash. This is the most ironic thing ever. He's facing a backlash after his victory party charged $13 per beer. If you wanted to buy a beer at his victory party, you pay $13 a beer. I'm not even mad. I just hope everyone notices the inconsistency. I hope everyone notices what a phony guy that is. I hope everyone notices that he will spout communism and show socialism to your face and then charge you $13 for a beer. That's like, a beer doesn't cost $13. So you are making money. That's capitalism. That's basic capitalism. This is worse. I don't care. Charge $13 for a beer. Get your money. That's all you. Like, if people want to pay it, cool. But the irony is he spouts the opposite. The worst irony is that his own staffers had to pay for their beers. The people who worked tirelessly to get him elected didn't even get free beers at the election party. It doesn't get worse than that. We're all in this together. We're all going to share resources, but you better pay for my beer, even though you just worked your ass off for me, for my benefit. What a piece of shit. What a piece of shit. That guy's such a piece of shit. It's the biggest, most, if not all politicians are pieces of shit. That guy's the worst amongst them. You know them by their fruit. Pay attention to what people create, what they do, not just what they say. Oh man, and this is so beautiful. Speaking of the socialists, the communists, they had this storybook time. So these people went out and read literally a children's book, and they'd have people come sit with them on a park bench or, out in public. And they're like, do you want to read this children's book? We're going to ask you some questions afterwards. Yeah, I mean, most people of this day and age are like, me? Oh, I got to talk? Yeah, I want to do it. Right. So, people are sitting down with them. They read the story. Essentially, the story is like, this kid wanted a toy. He saw other people had the toy. He didn't have the toy. So he started working and saving, and he got money and chores and whatever, lemonade stand, I don't know, got the money, he bought the toy, and the toy was so cool, such a cool toy. But all these other kids then saw the toy and were like, why does he have the toy and we don't? That's not fair. And he was like, I worked really hard for this toy. And they were like, but we should just get it because we don't have one and it's not fair. And we should get to play with that toy too. Give us your toy. And he's like, no. And the storybook, seriously. And the storybook readers were like, should he have to give them his toy? And these people who are leftists, socialists, communists, who voted for Mamdani, who were just saying, yeah, we need the free buses and the free rent and all the stuff, they were like, well, no, he shouldn't have to give them his toy. He worked for that toy. He should get to keep that toy. They should probably go work too and get their own toy. Like literally, they can say, I support Mamdani, I'm a democratic socialist, or I'm a socialist, or I'm a communist, whatever. And then a children's book can expose the fallacy to them, and they still won't see what they just did and said. They won't see the contradiction in it. It's hilarious. If you can find it, a lot of people have been sharing this on X, on Instagram, and other places. This storybook read to Mamdani voters. Pretty amazing stuff. And the reason, you might think, oh, it's mean to whatever. It's not mean to expose someone to their own fallacies. It's not mean to expose someone to their own delusions. It's mean to force them into that. But if you invite them in and they expose themselves, it's good for them. That ideally, they will then reflect and say, maybe I don't believe the things I think I believe. Maybe there's something else going on. That's great. We should all develop more nuanced understandings of reality. So I loved that so much. Call that a win. Linda Sarsour admits that Mamdani's rise in New York City was promoted by Muslims and Muslim organizations. Sorry, I'm just opening this. So yeah, many of them terrorist organizations. And so a lot of people have been like, oh, it's racist to say that terrorists support him or that he has terrorist support or terrorist connections. And actually, like, no one actually denies that they do. I mean, like, a lot of people deny it, I should say, but like none of the official documents, paperwork, or people involved can deny it because it is actually true. And, you can always say, oh, I don't agree that those are terrorist organizations. Cool. But you can't actually deny that they've been designated terrorist organizations and they are promoting him and his rise. So pretty interesting stuff. We've also got, there was this trans person, male to female. I don't even think they've had any surgeries or hormones. They just dress as a woman. And they're around LA, and they were going into different, I want to say 24-hour fitness or Vasa. I'm not sure which. Maybe it was Gold. I think it was Gold's Gym, actually. Gold's Gym. And they were going into different Gold's Gyms and exposing their genitalia to women. And one of the women, at least, stood up and said, no, you can't do that, and tried to get the administration of the gym to, kick them out or keep them out. And they wouldn't, because all trans people are allowed to do whatever they want. And so then she'd go to a different gym. She's like, fine, I'm not coming to this gym anymore. Still a Gold's Gym, but like somewhere across town. This person followed that woman to 4 different gyms. If this isn't harassment, I don't know what it is. And they pretended like, oh, it was all just a coincidence. I didn't know what gym she was at. She's harassed me at 4 gyms. Like total narcissistic reversal. Like she's the one harassing me at all 4 of these gyms. Well, that person turns out to have brutally beat their ex-wife. And she was so beat, her jaw was cracked and broken. I mean, brutally beat her, which caused them to divorce. And then this person took her name and started dressing like a woman. So he beat the shit out of his wife. Then he took her name and started calling himself that. Then he started dressing like her. And now he's going around harassing women in locker rooms and showing his genitalia to her. And yes, I refuse to call him her. because he's a man. He's a biological male. And it shows over and over again, there are some people who are trans who don't fit this, but the vast majority of biological men who are pretending to be women, it's a sexual fetish and it's a predatory behavior. We don't need sexual fetishes in public, and we don't need you to predate our women, to move into women's spaces in a predatory manner, to abuse them, to harass them. That's not okay. I don't care if you are actually trans or not actually. It's not okay. If you're actually trans and one of the few people who it isn't a sexual fetish, which is very rare, then maybe you would have enough self-respect to not make women feel uncomfortable in this way if you could avoid it. And I'll say this too, if you are actually trans and it's not a sexual fetish, almost always you are a very convincing looking woman and nobody would know or care. But it's very different when you go into a space like this and you expose yourself and harass people. And when you have a history of brutalizing women physically, well, now we know you're a predator. So you outed yourself. Take your sexual fetish elsewhere. And Kansas mayor was charged with election fraud after his re-election. This man, Chris Kobach is who caught this man. He's a Kansas mayor who is an illegal immigrant. This is a hilarious story. Everyone says, oh, illegal immigrants can't even vote. This is a fallacy. This is a lie. This is just what Republicans want to say to deport everyone. They can't even vote. Well, here's a illegal immigrant as the mayor of a Kansas town. His name was Jose Joe Ceballos, mayor of Coldwater, Kansas. And he was reelected Tuesday. So this is his second term as mayor. And the reason they caught him is because he voted illegally in the race. I don't know if the illegal part was that he voted for himself or that he voted at all because he's an illegal immigrant, but however they caught him, they then realized, well, you can't be mayor. You're an illegal immigrant, dude. So, wow. Yeah, you can't tell me that illegal immigrants can't even vote if they can also become mayors. And what someone said about this is they said, we've mostly been running on trust. When someone fills out the paperwork to run for mayor or whatever else, and they just say, I'm a citizen, we just believe them. Like, this is my line. So you can't tell me they can't vote if they can run for office and win and then get reelected. But he's been caught now. I don't know who's going to be mayor of Coldwater now, but it's not him. So wild story. Illegal immigrants as mayors in Kansas. Trump has had a lot of things he's been saying lately that seem against his base. He said 600,000 Chinese students coming to the U.S. is a pro-MAGA stance. He says you'd have half the colleges in the United States go out of business without them. So I know what MAGA wants better than anybody else, he says. And maybe he's right. I don't know. I don't really want many, if any, Chinese students here, but that's just me. He also said the world is the United States, meaning that whatever we do here affects the whole world. He's not wrong about that. I'm sure people are going to take that a different way, but that's true. Microsoft has recruited popular influencers to promote Copilot, the AI chat pilot, to young consumers with a campaign that sells Copilot as a life coach. And honestly, it's like a pretty good one. I'm not going to even try to hide it. If you go talk to Copilot or ChatGPT or Grok about your life problems, they tend to give relatively good advice. And you can change that. You can tell it how to behave, and you can tell it to treat you, horribly, and to tell you bad things, and to be satanic or anything else you want, and it'll do it. But if you just go off the raw, like just straight in, like no pretext, you didn't train it at all, and you just start asking, like, it's pretty good actually. So they're not wrong about that. Should we just trust them therefore? No. Not at all. But I also wouldn't trust a life coach automatically. Like you should always be questioning everything that's coming through you and filtering it through your own inner mastery. Quite obviously, I'd say. So, the difference, there is none. You should be wary no matter where you're getting your information. Hannibal Gaddafi, youngest son of Libya's late leader Muammar Gaddafi, is released from jail on bail with his travel ban lifted after a decade in detention without trial. Lebanon has released him. His father should have never been so hated and taken out unfairly, and probably him either. You may have heard Nancy Pelosi is finally giving it up, taking our ability to follow her insider trading away from us. But as instantly as she started to disappear, her daughter came on the scene. Did you even know she had a daughter? No, I didn't. Christine Pelosi will run for the California State Senate. Will she win? It's almost guaranteed. It's almost guaranteed because they're a crime family that runs that state, a la Pelosi and Newsom, and it's not likely to stop unless a lot of things change. And as we've seen in the recent redistricting and the forcing through of all sorts of stuff that seems to ensure their ongoing control of California, they're likely to hold on to that control unless, again, something drastic happens. So unfortunately, here comes Christine Pelosi. Chinese consul general in Japan threatened to decapitate the nation's new prime minister over her comments in defense of Taiwan. So China's essentially just leftist. They're like, if I don't like you, I'll kill you. If I don't like your policies, I'll kill you. You deserve to die because you're not doing what I want. It's like the ultimate narcissism. And that's that new prime minister of Japan, who is pretty Trumpian. She's very like, let's be hard on immigration. Let's not let just anyone in. Let's deport some of the people who are already here. Let's keep Japan for Japanese culture. And she's pro-Taiwan. And as we talked about earlier, China isn't. China wants to take all of Taiwan's everything and control electronics around the world even more. So that's the fight. She's apparently in it, and they want to decapitate her for it. RFK Jr. has announced that the FDA is removing warnings on women's estrogen-based hormone replacement therapy products. You know, they always have to say, oh, it causes cancer. But we actually don't know that it causes cancer, just that when people have hormonal disruptions, cancer tends to do better. And so then we have to always warn, oh, hormones might give you cancer. And they might. I don't know what doesn't, right? But that's pretty helpful in my opinion. So good thing. In back to BB, and we talked about like, will he be pardoned? Trump's asking for his pardon. And why I said maybe he won't be is because in the Israeli Knesset, their legislative building body, accusations of blame for October 7th were being screamed. He was being called a war criminal. He was being called a liar, corrupt, a murderer, and that he allowed October 7th to happen so that he had a pretext for war in Gaza and Palestine. And I go a step further and say it didn't even really happen except by Israeli aggression against itself. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it really was Palestinians, Gazans somehow flew in on their little helicopter motor things, whatever. Maybe that happened. Maybe he did just allow it. But I actually think it's worse than that. And it's really cool to see him being yelled at that in his own governmental body's organization. So good. And that makes me think maybe he won't just get away with everything, but we will see. So far, he's been pretty weaselly. The Supreme Court is going to hear a case determining if states can count mail-in ballots that are received after Election Day. Most states say that you can't and they won't, and this is going to determine whether any state is allowed to. Some people take issue with that because they think all states should be up to their own election. However they want to do elections, that's the way they should do it. And maybe that's a good point. And also maybe we need to make sure elections are sound and not even taken over at the state level. But we'll see what the Supreme Court says about it. California Democrats are hiring new San Diego enforcement officers to visit every home in San Diego every year to do what, you might ask? To check if they are recycling. No joke. They have officers who are going to go to every home and look into their trash, sift through it, and see if there's anything in it that could have been recycled. And if there is, you get a fine. It is government overreach to such an extreme level. All the money that's going to go into that could have been much better spent. If you really want people to recycle, you could do incentives for it, and then people will do it more, and you will spend less money doing it, and they will feel happier because they will get something from it. It's a simple way. Incentives and reward-based always works better. Positive reinforcement always works better. Scientifically, it's proven, and we all know it works better than force and abuse and chastisement and fines. But they don't care because they want to have this weird mafia come to your house and force you to recycle. Trump's lawyers have demanded a retraction from the BBC and threatened to sue for $1 billion if it does not respond by Friday, November 14th, about how they so egregiously misedited his comments as to make it seem like he was asking for, encouraging, and demanding his followers to commit January 6th overthrow of government. So blatantly full of lies. We've had 2 resignations out of the BBC because of this. They have said that it happened, but they haven't come fully out and issued a full retraction and setting of the record straight. So $1 billion lawsuit against them if they don't make it even more right. More drug boats are being blown up in the war, the unofficial war with Venezuela. And Jeffrey Epstein also back in the news because of his Zorro Ranch is being more deeply investigated by some Democratic state people who want to see what else they can find about the sex trafficking that went on there. And I hope that that is actually what is happening and not that they're trying to plant evidence against certain people that they hate with such a fervor that it's almost unbelievable. So actual justice would be cool. Hopefully that's how that's used. Okay. Mamdani has named an all-woman transition team. It's more important that they are women than that they can do anything. So that hopefully makes you feel good if you are someone who is into DEI and identity politics. It makes me feel sick. Serbia approved Jared Kushner's Miami-based investment firm Affinity Partners to build a $500 million Trump hotel apartment, shops, and offices on the Ministry of Defense site. General Stab, I don't know how you say it, the site of the 1999 NATO bombing. So in Serbia, this is what's happening. Of course, many Serbians are opposed to this because they say leaving the rubble of the building untouched is a historical monument to, what took place and how it went down. And so they want to keep it, but it seems it's already going through, and a lot of people there, I will say, also like the idea of not having this just bombed empty building sitting around anymore. And so Jared Kushner is involved with that, and that'll be happening. It'll be interesting to do a deeper dive into that because I wonder what else is going on. There's always something, right? Got that. We've already talked about it. Got that like 4 times. Oh yeah, this is the other thing Mamdani did as soon as he won. So first he charged everyone $13 for a beer. Then he got on a private jet and went down for a working trip to a luxury tropical getaway down in the Caribbean. So he's such a socialist, such a communist, such a long-suffering man of the people. Just instantly down to the luxury resort as soon as he's elected, just out of here on the beaches. Oh my God. Oh my God. And I bet you most of his constituents and supporters don't even know either of those things and maybe don't even care. That's how blinded they are with devotion to their side. The tariff stimulus check, the $2,000 check, he says, will be paid to everyone. Trump has said so. It's not actually guaranteed. It's not actually an official stance yet. We don't know if that's going to happen. I am opposed to it. I would think most people would be. If there's extra money, we should probably be using it to pay down debt. That's what I said before. I'll say it again, I'm sure. The Supreme Court has blocked the payment of SNAP benefits during the shutdown because it was actually illegal for the previous court to order that they must be paid. And so now that the government's reopened, I'm sure everyone will get their SNAP benefits, and that's that. People can stop complaining and fighting about it. I'm not talking again about the ostrich farm. It's horrible. I can't. Operation Guardian in Oklahoma resulted in 70 illegal immigrants arrested and deported. In that, there was a bunch of sex trafficking, human trafficking, and drug trafficking that was also shut down. This is, again, one of the really positive side effects of going after deporting, especially the illegal immigrants that are cartel members or cartel support members. And so good. We'll take it. Just flying through some of these that we may have already touched on. Some people think they identified a January 6th pipe bomber because of her gait, and she's a government official or police officer, and we kind of already all knew that that was an agent of some kind, so I'm not surprised. We talked about the UK against digital ID and their protests. In Chicago, Border Patrol agents of ICE were shot at. The attacks there had definitely ramped up. There was all sorts of cars that were trying to block them, ram them. People were throwing things at them, and someone actually shot someone. So that happened. Your words have consequences. If you incite people to violence, they often will do it, especially if you repeat it every day for 10 years. I don't really care about this. I don't care about this. Whatever. We don't care about this. Zuckerberg and his wife have expanded their existing biohub initiative with AI-powered biology to cure or prevent disease. Ugh. I doubt it. I don't care. I think you're stupid. Go away. Oh, that's for another day as well. You may have heard that Arizona teachers mocked Charlie Kirk's death by wearing white t-shirts that seemed to be covered in blood only on the side where he was shot. I thought so too. They had an excuse. They said it wasn't about him. It was something else. And it just happens to look the same. And I thought, well, that's a pretty flimsy excuse until it turned out they wore the exact same Halloween costumes last year, long before Charlie Kirk died. And so then I had to admit, you're right, it is actually something, as much as it looks exactly like what people thought it was, it really wasn't. And as a reminder to us all that our bias really can make us see things in a way, be sure that we're right and we can still be wrong. So it's good to notice. I don't care about that. We already talked about that. Trump endorsed Vivek Ramaswamy for governor of Ohio. I don't know if he won or not. Mamdani is already begging for money for all his very expensive programs. This doesn't matter anymore. Oh, these ostriches. I don't know. Maybe I didn't talk about it last week. These ostriches I've talked about before on the show. There was hundreds of them. They're in Canada many, many months ago, or maybe even almost a year ago. 2 out of 300, I want to say, tested positive for bird flu. And so all of them were slated to be destroyed. Many months went by and none of them died. They're all healthy and alive still. And still they were going to be slaughtered because that's policy, is to slaughter the entire flock if you find bird flu in any of them. And so even though it was proven they're healthy, not dying, even though RFK Jr. came out and said we should probably study these birds because they somehow survived what we thought was this ultra deadly thing, and here they are just fine. So they're studyable. They can give us knowledge that we don't have about how to actually handle this stuff. RFK from the US reached out to the Canadian government and said, hey, can you please not slaughter these? All these people from around the world were like, please don't slaughter these ostriches. Hundreds of ostriches. And finally, they were slaughtered. They were corralled. You can see them here in the small image here of them inside of this hay bale structure that was built to corral them in. And in the cover of dead night, these people went out with guns and executed every last ostrich. You could hear them screaming. You had footage from earlier in the day of them running away and trying to get away from the slaughter. And then all night long, they went through and killed them one by one. One of the saddest things I've ever seen. 300 ostriches is like 300 humans to me. I know that sounds ridiculous to many people, but if you're willing to murder these animals for no reason at all, I don't hesitate to believe that you would also murder people if you were told that they were a danger and had some sort of virus. And that matters. It matters also that these ostriches should have had a chance at actual logical outcomes, to be cared for, to be understood, and maybe even to be studied, as RFK Jr. wanted. And instead, they were senselessly murdered. There was no need for it. Everybody wanted them to be free, except for very small amounts of exceptionally stupid people who didn't understand the actual situation and that it had been months since they had been tested. People offered to pay for them to be retested to prove that none of them had bird flu now and didn't need to be killed. Government said no. What they actually said is they're too tall. We can't retest them. It doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even have to make sense because the government does what it wants. And if they want to kill your birds, they're going to kill your birds. And I'll tell you what, if you came to kill my birds, you'd have a very different outcome. Because while some people may say, well, we have to, what are we going to do? Whatever, I'll say, I'll do anything to keep you from taking what's mine, especially if it involves life. And any life is sacred, and it's my sacred life. So have a good time trying. You might not like the outcome. Some of these I'm going to leave for next week. The co-discoverer of the double helix DNA dies at 97. I think I will actually do a full show about that this coming up here in a few days, so we can go dive deeper into him, the conspiracy theories around him, and some of the very interesting studies he did, why he was given a Nobel Prize and why it was taken away. And coming to an end here. Turkey's issued an arrest warrant for Netanyahu. Makes you feel good about Turkey. Trump says the economy is doing good. China and him have reached agreements. AI and technology are doing well in the US, and we're all going to be fine. So Denmark, big win, has banned social media for children under 15 due to poor mental health outcomes. That's wonderful. We should all be doing that of our own choice. We don't need a government to do it for us. We should just be doing that for our children because it's what's best for them. Schools, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that schools cannot force students to use preferred pronouns. Woo! That's a huge win for freedom of speech, for freedom from predators, and freedom from delusion. So children do not have to use the preferred pronouns of their teachers or other students. And that, I'm sure, will make it to the Supreme Court, and I would expect it to be reinforced there. We already know Israel's dumping millions into people like me, people who do shows and other things, alternative media sources, to try to get good ideas about Israel out there. And peer-reviewed study shows that only 1 in 7 positive PCR tests in Germany corresponded to an actual COVID infection. We already knew that, but now we have a study about it. We'll call it a win. Maybe some people will listen. Oh, goodness sakes. Oh, that's a bigger one too. I don't have time to go through some of these guys, so I'm going to say, I'm just going to briefly try to get through the last few and see if any of them is easy and quick. Oops. And yeah, okay, good. We have a few things I'm going to weigh. I'm going to either do a longer episode in general or just bring it up when I have more time next time. I just was doing this under a little bit of a time constraint. So we'll call it a close now. We'll say we had some pretty good wins. And one of the biggest losses is the ostrich farm, in my opinion. If government can come and take your animals from you, then they can take anything from you. And if Canada is so weak-willed and so overcome by tyrannical government that they can't protect 300 ostriches who are perfectly healthy and well and have no sensible reason to be taken out, then you have lost your country and you've lost your soul as well. You can get it back. You can regrow your soul, as Joe Pera says. You can regrow your soul, but you have to know you lost it in the first place to do so. So may Canada and all people everywhere wake up to what is truly ours in sovereignty and what we can do in order to maintain it. And until then, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
screens, it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones, a holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempt the mental robbery, executed sloppily. Hypocrisy, this mockery, and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.